The front door is still open. Wide open. One sandal in the entryway, keys still swinging in the lock. You ever scream so loud that you don't make a sound? Yeah, that kind of moment. I didn't think she'd actually leave. That was the whole point of saying it. You bluff. You draw the line. You say, go ahead, expecting them to stop. She didn't. She walked right over that line like it was made of sidewalk chalk in the rain. I don't even know what she took with her. She moved fast. There was no suitcase, no coat, just grabbed a canvas tote and stormed out like she was late for a spin class. I stood in the kitchen, still holding the dish towel from wiping my hands, spaghetti sauce on my knuckle, sweat on my temple, and I asked, you think this is normal? You think it's normal to get dressed up at 9 p.m. and go meet a friend, without even telling me which friend? She didn't answer. She didn't even flinch. Just grabbed her phone and said, I'm not doing this tonight, Myles. And I said it. The sentence I didn't know would change my life forever. All right, go ahead. But the moment you step out that door, our marriage is finished. Don't ever think about coming back. I didn't shout it. I said it the way you say your coffee's ready, or watch the step. Calm. Flat. I thought the seriousness in my voice would break her. Instead, she looked at me like I was furniture. And left. I'm not writing this because I want pity. I'm writing this because I'm scared. Not of losing her. That already happened. Not of being alone. That's already begun. I'm scared because there's something about all of this that doesn't feel real. Not just emotionally. I mean literally. There are things that aren't adding up. A bracelet in our bathroom drawer that I never bought her. An Uber receipt on our shared Gmail account to an address in another city. A receipt from a jewelry store printed at 11:36 a.m. last Thursday, while she was supposedly on a team-building retreat. And this part one haven't told anyone. Her sister texted me this morning and asked if I was still joining them for the Saturday rehearsal. What rehearsal? We don't have any events coming up. No birthdays. No weddings. Not that I've been invited to, anyway. And now I'm wondering if I've been a ghost in my own life for months. So yeah, the door's still open. The house smells like garlic and bad decisions. And I've got the chills even though the thermostat says 72. Whatever's happening, it's bigger than just a marriage falling apart. And I think I'm about to find out just how deep this hole goes. I closed the door eventually. Not because I wanted to, but because the neighbors across the street, the ones with the porch swing and plastic flamingos, started peeking through their blinds. I guess they heard the echo of the door slamming, or maybe they just caught a glimpse of Odette walking down the street like she was in a perfume commercial. Either way, I couldn't let them see me standing there like a left-behind child. The silence afterward was suffocating. I mean that literally. I walked back into the kitchen and actually had to sit down because I forgot to breathe. It's not even the drama of it all. It's the absurdity. A few hours earlier, we were arguing about whether the dishwasher had a pre-wash setting or not. Now I was sitting alone, pasta getting cold, staring at the place where she used to sit. It wasn't grief. Not yet. It was confusion, like the moment after a car crash, when your ears are ringing and your hands won't stop shaking. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. So I did what any emotionally unstable man does when he has no answers and too much internet. I started looking for clues. First place I checked? The tote bag she always left slumped by the front door. She didn't take it this time. She brought a different one. That was odd in itself. But inside the usual bag, I found something she must have missed. A folded receipt tucked into a romance novel she was halfway through. It was for a florist, not a local one. This was from a boutique flower shop 2 counties over. The note on the receipt said, "For J&D, thanks again for everything." Oh, I blinked at that line for a long time. J&D? Who were they? And thanks for what? It wasn't even the flowers that got to me. It was the way she signed it. Oh, she's never abbreviated her name like that. Not in emails. Not even in notes to me. It felt foreign, like she was someone else when she wrote it. Like she had a second self I wasn't allowed to know. Then came the photos. She hadn't logged out of her iCloud account on the shared desktop. I didn't snoop. I swear. I didn't type in passwords or dig through folders. I just clicked photos because I saw the icon bouncing like there was a new upload. It was a live photo, taken 3 days ago. Odette, sitting on the hood of a silver car I don't recognize, laughing with a man whose face is turned away from the camera. They were parked near a lake. I could hear birdsong and the faint ripple of water in the background. Her smile was real, not the polite one she gives when neighbors wave, or the forced one she gave at our anniversary dinner. This one was genuine. She touched his shoulder in that soft, casual way you only do when your guard's down, when you think no one's watching. I froze the frame, zoomed in. His wristwatch looked familiar. Not because I've seen him before, I haven't, but because I've seen that watch in our house. Specifically, in the junk drawer. Top right corner. Under the batteries and the expired coupons. A few weeks ago, I asked her whose it was. She said it was a backup gift for her boss, but he didn't want it. I remember because I laughed and said, "Who has backup watches for their boss?" She rolled her eyes and told me I was being paranoid. Now here I was, watching her touch the man who owns that watch, by a lake I didn't know existed. That's when my hands started shaking again. I slammed the laptop shut. Too loud. Pancake the cat hissed and darted into the laundry room like the apocalypse had arrived. My heart was in my throat, and my mind was somewhere I couldn't follow. I didn't know what to do. So I did what I always do when I feel powerless. I called my brother, Julian. Julian's the opposite of me. He's divorced, wears linen year-round, and has never owned a houseplant he didn't kill. But he's blunt, and tonight, I needed blunt. When I told him everything, the photo, the note, the door, he didn't hesitate. "She's been gone for a while, man," he said. "You just finally said something she couldn't spin her way out of." I asked him what I was supposed to do now. If I should text her, ask questions, pretend I was calm until I got more information. He said something I didn't expect. "You might not like the answers you're chasing. Be sure you actually want them." And then, as if fate had been eavesdropping, my phone buzzed. A text from Odette. 3 words. "You shouldn't dig." That's it. No punctuation. No explanation. Nothing. Just that chilling sentence that made my skin crawl. Not "I'm sorry." Not "let's talk." Not "it's not what it looks like." Just a warning. And that's when I realized. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. It was a game. And I just made the first real move. I didn't respond to her message. Not right away. What could I even say? "You shouldn't dig." That's what she wrote. A sentence so short, so cold. It didn't feel like something your wife would send. It felt like something out of a thriller novel. No please, no context, just a threat dressed up as a suggestion. I stared at it on my phone for 15 minutes before I even moved. The light from the screen reflected on the kitchen tiles. Everything felt sterile and distant, like I was watching my own life from behind glass. Eventually, I set the phone down, walked to the junk drawer, and opened it again. The watch was gone. I didn't hear her come back. Didn't hear the door. But I wasn't imagining this. I knew it had been there. The cheap full leather strap. The scratched face. The heavy metallic clunk when I shifted batteries around. I could describe it better than I could describe my own wedding ring. But now, gone. The drawer looked freshly organized too. Like someone had neatened it just enough to cover their tracks. That was the moment the paranoia clicked into place. Not paranoia like nervousness. I mean full-blown dread. This wasn't a story about an affair anymore. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about erasure. She wasn't just lying, she was revising. Editing pieces of my reality like a screenwriter cutting lines from a script. And I had no idea what version of the story I was still allowed to be in. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, the one with the ugly green armchair she insisted on keeping from her college apartment, and I listened. Listened for sounds that weren't there. Cars that might slow outside. Keys fumbling in the lock. A footstep where it shouldn't be. At 3:12 a.m., I thought I heard something in the attic, a dull, dragging sound. But when I grabbed a flashlight and climbed up the creaking ladder, there was nothing. Just insulation, boxes, and the smell of forgotten summers. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I checked her old Facebook. She barely uses it anymore, moved most of her social life to Instagram, which I'd never followed closely. But her Facebook was still technically active. And what I found there was odd. Her About Me section had changed. It used to list me. Married to Myles. Lives in Chapel Hill. Cat dad to Pancake. That kind of corny stuff. Now, the marriage status was gone. Not divorced. Not, it's complicated. Just nothing. Her city had changed to undisclosed. And there was a new quote under her bio. Not all exits need applause. That one line sent ice down my back. I clicked through her friends list. Noticed 2 names I didn't recognize at the top. Julian Denner and Janessa Vale. J and D. The initials from the florist receipt. I clicked Julian's profile. Private. 1 photo. A blurry street mural of a snake eating its own tail. The caption read, What was written cannot be unwritten. Then I clicked Janessa's, and that's when I knew I was way out of my depth. Her profile picture was a black square. Her posts were all cryptic, quotes from obscure books, references to historical disappearances, phrases like shadow selves, and liminal touchpoints. One post from a week ago said, "When she returns, it won't be the same woman. Don't try to follow. Don't ask questions." I swear, I almost dropped my phone. These weren't just edgy aesthetics. It felt like code. Like Odette wasn't just having an affair, she was involved in something. A group? A cult? A project? I had no frame of reference. So I did what you do when you hit that breaking point between normal and nightmare. I drove. No destination. I just got in the car and started driving, windows down, no music, no plan. I passed strip malls and gas stations and empty fields, and the kinds of places you forget exist 5 seconds after you drive past them. And then I saw it. A silver sedan. Parked just off the road. Dusty. Unwashed. Alone in a gravel lot behind an abandoned ice cream stand. And on the hood, the exact same scarf Odette wore in that lake photo. The one with the stitched blue moons on the hem. Draped like a calling card. I didn't stop. I wanted to. My instincts screamed at me to pull over, look closer, confront something. But my hand stayed locked on the wheel. I just stared as I passed, and the scarf fluttered slightly in the wind, like it knew I'd seen it. By the time I got home, the sun was going down. Pancake met me at the door with a low, annoyed meow. I was about to pour his food when I saw it. A photo on the fridge that hadn't been there this morning. Taped up, neat and centered. It was a picture of me, sleeping, in our bed, last night, alone, written on the back, in handwriting I don't recognize. Sleep tight. You're almost free. I didn't sleep that night, again. I couldn't. The photo on the fridge kept drawing my eyes like it was humming some silent, unbearable frequency. A photo of me, in bed, taken while I was asleep, from inside my own home. That alone was enough to mess with my sanity. But the handwriting on the back, that strange, taunting phrase, sleep tight, you're almost free, had an energy to it that made my skin feel too small for my body. I kept walking circles around the living room. Every shadow felt too sharp, every sound too intentional. At one point I stood completely still, just trying to hear if the house was breathing. Don't ask me what I mean by that. You'd only understand if you've ever felt like the walls were watching you. And I swear, in that moment, I did feel it. Like the silence was listening. I didn't call anyone. Not because I didn't want help, but because I didn't know how to explain what kind of help I needed. What was I supposed to say? Hi. My wife walked out on me after I confronted her, and now I'm being slowly psychologically tormented by cryptic notes and strangers connected to cult-sounding social media profiles. I'd be lucky if they sent a wellness check instead of a straitjacket. Around 5 a.m., I got an idea. A stupid, desperate one, but I was running out of options. I opened my laptop again and searched for Janessa Vale, one of the names from Odette's Facebook friends list. I wanted to know if she had any public posts that might explain what was going on. Anything. A blog. A Medium article. An Amazon wishlist. Something that would give me context. What I found instead was a podcast. Obscure. 5 episodes. No ads. No music. Just raw audio and a woman's voice. Low, deliberate, and cold as stone. The show was called Exit Architecture. Each episode was titled like a chapter in a surreal novel. The hour with no witness. Bodies without context. Yourself on paper. And the final one? The spouses who stayed too long. My heart dropped. I pressed play. The woman speaking never identified herself, but I knew it was Janessa. Her voice matched the tone of her online posts. Calm, dangerous, rehearsed. The episode began with her saying, "If you found this, you're already halfway detached. Congratulations. Now we can begin." She talked about cutting points. That's what she called them. The moment when one life ends and another silently starts. Not physically, psychologically, socially, emotionally. She spoke about people who outgrow the identities assigned to them by marriage, suburbia, names, or history. There is no law of the universe, she said, that says you must remain where you were last loved. I listened for over 30 minutes as she described something that wasn't quite a cult, but wasn't innocent either. A network of people, mostly women, who staged their own disappearances in slow motion, who created fractures in narrative to quietly leave behind the lives they felt trapped in. They didn't ghost. They rewrote, bit by bit, until the version of themselves their spouses remembered no longer existed, even on paper. She mentioned rehearsals, symbolic deaths, rebirths by new names. And in the final moments of the podcast, she said something I will never, ever forget. The last step before detachment is this. You must be willing to let them believe they were right, just once, so they'll stop digging. Let them say go, and then go. It hit me like a punch to the chest. That sentence, it was exactly what I had done. I had told Odette to go. I gave her the out. She wanted me to say it. She needed it to fulfill some sick ritual she was following like scripture. And now, I'd done exactly what they wanted. But something about it didn't sit right. If she was truly gone, if she'd detached, then why was I still being watched? Why the photo? Why the message about being almost free? It didn't feel like closure. It felt like escalation. I went back upstairs and opened our bedroom closet for the first time since she left. It was half empty. Her coats were gone. Her scarves. Most of her jewelry. But one thing caught my eye. A plain white envelope sitting perfectly centered on my stack of winter sweaters. No name. No markings. Just folded shut, not sealed. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were two things, a flash drive and a single Polaroid. The Polaroid was old, clearly faded around the corners. It was a photo of Odette and two other women, neither of whom I recognized. They were standing in front of what looked like an abandoned church, smiling with their arms around each other. But their faces were drawn over. Someone had taken a black pen and scribbled over all three of them like angry censors. The flash drive had one file on it. A video, unnamed. I double-clicked. It opened to static, then focused on a dimly lit room. Concrete walls, no windows, a flickering bulb overhead. Odette sat in a metal chair. Silent. Still. Then, without looking at the camera, she said, "This isn't about you. It never was. You just stayed too long inside someone else's unfinished chapter." She stood, walked out of frame, and the video ended. No credits. No timestamp. Nothing. Just darkness. I watched the video 5 more times that morning, trying to make sense of the details. Odette's tone, the sharp inflection on the words unfinished chapter, the way her shadow stretched unnaturally against the back wall like there was a second light source I couldn't see. I even slowed the footage down frame by frame, hoping to catch some hidden clue, a reflection, a second voice, anything. But the video was clean. Too clean. Almost deliberately devoid of context. It didn't feel like a message. It felt like a riddle left by someone who had no intention of being understood. By noon, my nerves were shot. I was exhausted, strung out on a combination of caffeine and dread, but I couldn't stop chasing threads. I needed someone, anyone, who had seen this before, who could confirm I wasn't going completely insane, that this wasn't just the emotional aftermath of abandonment playing tricks on my brain. So I did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't do. I contacted one of the names I'd found connected to Odette online. Not Janessa. She was too high up in whatever this structure was, too cryptic, too deliberate. But Julian Denner, the other one? His profile had recently changed from private to public. It almost felt like an invitation. I messaged him from a throwaway account. Just 5 words. She left. I saw everything. He replied in under 3 minutes. Meet me in 45. Lot behind St. Gildas. That was it. No name. No confirmation. No small talk. Just a location. I knew the place, a half-abandoned church south of the industrial district. They'd shut it down a few years ago after a failed fire inspection and some scandal about misused funds. I hadn't driven that way in years, but suddenly it felt like all roads were bending toward it. I got there early, parked near the tree line, and waited. The lot was empty except for an overturned shopping cart, a dozen cigarette butts, and a single rusted-out bike frame. For a while, it felt like he wouldn't show, like I'd fallen for some trap or prank or worse. But then, just as my phone hit 1 p.m., a dark gray SUV pulled in. He didn't step out right away, just sat there for a bit, engine running. Then the door opened, and out stepped Julian Denner. He wasn't what I expected. Late 40s, wiry, with deep lines in his face that looked more from anxiety than age. He wore a plain black jacket, jeans, and a tired look like he hadn't slept in a week or a decade. No theatrics, no swagger, just quiet tension. He walked up to my window, tapped once, then leaned in. "I can give you 20 minutes, he said flatly. "After that, we shouldn't be seen together." I rolled down the window and told him about the photo, the flash drive, the notes, the scarf on the car hood, the florist receipt, all of it. I even mentioned the podcast. He listened without interruption, nodding slowly like someone who'd heard variations of this story before. Then he asked a single question. Has she used the word migration yet? I blinked. What? He looked over his shoulder like someone might be watching, then leaned in closer. That's their term. Not leaving. Not running. Migrating. It's how they justify what they do. They call it narrative separation. You were her anchor. Now you're dead weight. Dead weight. I repeated. He nodded solemnly. They don't just leave their partners. They sever them. Turn them into relics of a version of themselves they've decided to kill. Once the script changes, the old cast has to go. He pulled out a worn leather notebook, flipped through several pages, and showed me a grainy photograph. A different woman this time, different city, but the look in her eyes, the posture, the distance, it was the same. That same hollow, post-attachment stare I saw in Odette when she walked out. Julian tapped the photo. She left her husband after 9 years. Same pattern. Silent detachment, cryptic notes, altered social accounts, staged retreat. By the time he realized what was happening, her records had already been rewritten. Digital trails scrambled. She didn't exist under her maiden name anymore. She didn't even go by a legal alias. Just a symbol. A rune. I thought he was being metaphorical, until he pulled out a folded slip of paper from his coat pocket and handed it to me. It was the same rune that had been drawn on the back of the Polaroid left in my closet, a spiral wrapped in a cracked triangle. She's been initiated, he said. Once they start leaving breadcrumbs for you, that means they want to make sure you look. But not too deep. Just enough to confuse you, weaken your hold, and make sure you collapse before you get close. I asked him what they wanted. Julian hesitated. Some say it's autonomy. Others think it's psychological warfare. But I've met 5 men like you. 3 of them vanished. Not metaphorically. Literally. Jobs gone. IDs flagged. Social accounts scrubbed. It's like the system starts turning against you one detail at a time. I stared at him, numb. You're saying they're targeting men? I'm saying they're testing something. Maybe a belief system. Maybe a tech experiment. I don't know. But it's spreading. Quietly. And they always leave a warning. He looked me dead in the eyes. Did you get yours? I nodded slowly. Yeah. She texted me. You shouldn't dig. Julian's jaw clenched. Then you've got less time than I thought. Without another word, he turned and walked back to his SUV. Within seconds, he was gone, disappearing down the broken road like a ghost retreating into fog. I sat there in my car, breathing in silence, watching dust settle on the windshield. The words kept repeating in my head. Narrative separation. Deadweight. Migration. And one last phrase I hadn't yet dared say out loud. What if I'm next? I didn't go home right away after meeting Julian. I drove around aimlessly for hours, circling neighborhoods I didn't recognize and back roads I hadn't taken in years. At one point, I stopped at a gas station to buy coffee and realized I hadn't eaten anything in over a day. I grabbed a sandwich, took one bite, and nearly gagged. It tasted like ash. Not spoiled. Just wrong. Like my mouth had stopped trusting the world. I finally made it home around sunset. The light was harsh and golden, bleeding sideways through the windows in a way that made the house feel alien. Everything looked familiar, but somehow off. The pillows on the couch slightly misaligned, the bathroom door ajar when I remembered closing it, the smell of something faintly floral in the air that I knew didn't belong to me. It felt like walking into a replica of my home, made by someone who had only ever seen it through surveillance footage. I checked the fridge. The photo was still there. I checked the bedroom. The envelope was gone. That nearly broke me. Not because I needed it, but because someone had come back into my home while I was gone. Again. They had walked past my cat, past my sofa, into my bedroom, taken the envelope, and left without leaving a single mark. Like ghosts. Or professionals. Or both. I sank into the armchair, heart racing, and tried to breathe. Tried to make sense of what this was. A cult? A game? Some elaborate psychological experiment? But no theory made sense. Nothing explained the precision, the coordination, the deliberate choice to toy with me instead of simply disappearing. That's when I heard the knock. Not a bang. Not a ring. Just a gentle, almost respectful knock on the front door. 2 soft raps like someone asking for permission to disturb the spiral I was falling into. I sat frozen for a second, wondering if I'd imagined it. Then it came again, this time a little firmer. I stood slowly, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. And that's when my heart stopped. It was Nate, my former college roommate. I hadn't seen Nate in over 8 years. Not since his own wife, Callie, had vanished under what, at the time, we all thought were tragic circumstances. He had dropped out of everything after that: school, work, social media. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just silence. It became a sad story we didn't touch. People whispered about mental health. Some said he moved to Alaska. One person claimed they saw him on a conspiracy theory YouTube channel years later. But now here he was, on my doorstep, looking 10 years older, thinner, and carrying a manila folder tucked under his arm. I opened the door. Neither of us spoke for a moment. He looked at me with eyes like wet gravel, dull, but heavy with buried things. "I heard," he said softly. "Heard what?" I asked, still barely able to believe he was real. "That she migrated." The air between us folded. I stepped aside and let him in without another word. Once inside, he sat on the edge of the sofa like it might collapse under him. I watched his hands tremble as he opened the folder and laid out several sheets of paper, photographs, and, most disturbingly, a copy of what looked like my own driver's license, only slightly wrong. The address was outdated. The photo was me, but taken from a different angle than I remembered. Even the date of birth had been shifted by a few days. "I've been tracking them since Callie," Nate said, flipping through pages. "I know how this looks, but I promise you, I'm not insane. They've done this to more men than anyone realizes. Every year, dozens of women vanish without being officially missing. Their old lives dissolve, but no crime is committed, because technically, nothing illegal happens. They vanish on paper first. The person you're grieving is still alive, just rewritten." I stared at the ID, cold sweat crawling down my back. "Why me?" "Because you noticed," he said. "That's all it takes. Most husbands don't. Or they convince themselves it's their fault and give up. You didn't." "But why this elaborate theater?" I asked, finally breaking into anger. "The notes, the photos, the video messages. What the hell is the point?" Nate looked at me with haunted exhaustion. "Because you're the test case." He pulled out a final photo, grainy, shot from a high angle. A surveillance cam still. It was me, standing in my backyard, looking up at the sky. Only I had never seen this photo before. Never known when it was taken. The timestamp was from 2 weeks before Odette left. "They watch to see how you unravel," he said. "They document the psychological collapse. And if you make it far enough, if you keep pulling the thread instead of blaming yourself, they either recruit you or erase you." "Recruit me," I repeated, choking on the words. He nodded. "They call it integration. Not everyone is invited. Only those who prove they can endure the narrative fracture." I wanted to scream, to punch something, but all I could manage was a whisper. "So what do I do?" He looked at me for a long time. Then, quietly, he slid a small card across the coffee table. No writing, just a symbol. That same cracked triangle spiral I had seen before, now etched into something that felt like stone. "Show up here," he said. "1 week from tonight. Midnight. Don't bring your phone. Don't tell anyone. And if they offer you a name, don't say yes until they say it twice. That's the rule." "What happens if I don't go?" I asked. He stood, walked to the door, and looked back at me one final time. "Then they'll come to you." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone, once again, inside a story I never asked to be part of, with only one truth left ringing in my head. They never really left. They're still writing. I kept the card in my pocket for 6 days without looking at it again. I didn't touch it. I didn't even open the drawer where I'd placed it, as if just acknowledging its presence could trigger something irreversible. I wanted to believe Nate had finally lost it. That all this, the spirals, the video, the surveillance, the migration language, was some elaborate psychosis passed between wounded men like a virus. But each night, something happened. My lights would flicker at exactly 2:14 a.m. One night, my coffee maker turned on by itself. No beans, no water, just a quiet mechanical groan that sent me running into the kitchen with my fists clenched and heart beating in my teeth. Another time, all my browser tabs on my laptop refreshed at once, and when I checked my history, every visited site had been cleared, except for one: Exit Architecture. Net/unclaimed. When I clicked it, the page was blank. Just a black screen with a flashing cursor that never typed anything. I kept telling myself I could walk away, that I could move, block Odette's number, burn the photos, go back to therapy, find someone new, and pretend this was all just grief and shame playing dress-up as a conspiracy. But deep down, I knew the script had already been rewritten. I wasn't deciding the direction anymore. I was just trying to read ahead fast enough to see what page I was on. So when the night came, I went. No phone, no wallet, just the stone card, a flashlight, and my stupid, stubborn curiosity. The coordinates Nate had left led to an overgrown trail an hour outside the city. It wasn't marked on any map. I had to park a mile down and hike through brush and bramble, guided by a strange, low hum that vibrated through the soil more than the air. My shoes were soaked with mud, and the woods felt wrong. Too quiet, too still, as if the entire forest were holding its breath. At exactly midnight, I reached it. A clearing, unnaturally circular, lit by a ring of old halogen floor lamps powered by a small humming generator. At the center stood a rectangular wooden structure, not a cabin, not a shed. It was too tall, too narrow. It looked like a shipping crate had grown limbs and decided to stand upright. It had one door, no windows, no lock. I stood there for a long time, unsure if I should knock or speak or just walk away. But then the door creaked open slowly, as if summoned by indecision alone. Inside, a single chair, facing a screen. And on that screen, looping, grainy, distorted, was footage of me. Not surveillance footage, not candid shots, but reconstructions of my life. Reenactments. With actors. Every scene I watched had been staged. Slightly off. Like a high-budget reenactment documentary where the details were just inaccurate enough to make you nauseous. There was a version of me having dinner with Odette, but the meal was wrong. Salmon, when I hate fish. There was another of us on vacation, walking through a fake Venice built in what looked like a soundstage, the water clearly painted on. There were versions of fights we'd never had, conversations we'd never spoken, birthdays that didn't exist. And in every single scene, the actor playing me was smiling, even when he was alone, even when Odette left, even when he stood at the front door and whispered, "All right, go ahead." It wasn't anger I felt. It was erasure. Watching a version of myself so carefully scrubbed of grief, so molded into a palatable narrative that he couldn't possibly break. I realized what this was. This wasn't just documentation. This was replacement. They weren't observing me. They were rewriting me. I turned to leave, while rising in my throat, but the door had closed. And from somewhere behind the walls, a voice began to speak. Not mechanical, not theatrical. It was flat, unremarkable, like a customer service agent who had given the same speech 10,000 times. Myles Anders. Narrative designation, spouse-centric collapse arc. You've reached the critical threshold. A decision is now required. Do you accept reassignment? My knees buckled. I barely managed to speak. What does that mean? The voice did not waver. You may be folded into a new identity stream. Memories will be parsed for continuity. The emotional arc will be preserved. Your presence will be normalized. I'm not a character, I snapped. I'm a person. Silence. Then, the voice responded. You were. The walls flickered. The screen shifted to black. For a moment, everything stopped. No light, no sound, no breath. Then a new scene began. This time, it was me again. But not in my home. Not in my clothes. I was sitting at a long wooden table in an unfamiliar house, laughing with strangers. A woman, not Odette, kissed my cheek. Children ran through the background. I was smiling. Happy. Too happy. And then I noticed it. The woman. She had the same eyes. Not Odette's face, but her eyes. Unmistakable, transplanted into a different role. She looked directly at the camera and said, "Say yes, Myles. Say it twice." I screamed. Not a roar. A broken, cracked sob that shattered from the center and echoed through the hollow box of that cursed building. I pounded on the walls, tore at the screen, yelled until my voice fractured. But nothing changed. The footage kept playing. The simulation marched on. Finally, after what felt like hours, the door opened. I stumbled out into the night, drenched in sweat, shaking, and collapsed into the dirt. The lamps flickered once and shut off. The building behind me was gone, or had never been there at all. There was only forest, and silence, and the echo of my own voice, repeating in my head. Go ahead. I woke up in my car. Driver's seat reclined, shoes muddy, throat raw like I'd screamed through the night. The card with the spiral symbol was gone. My flashlight was back in the glove compartment, battery full. Everything else was exactly where I'd left it, except for the sky. It was morning, but the sun hung strangely low, like time itself hadn't caught up yet. A light fog rolled across the windshield, and for a moment, I thought I might have imagined the entire night. Then I saw it. Taped to the inside of the windshield was a note. Simple printer paper, typed in bold serif font. No heading, no signature. Your story was accepted. You were not. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words. And then, for the first time in what felt like weeks, I laughed. Not a full laugh, not joyful, but the kind of half-crooked smirk that leaks out when you realize you've made it through the fire, even if you're still smoking. I wasn't integrated. I hadn't been erased or folded into someone else's fake happily ever after. They'd rejected me, and strangely, that rejection felt like freedom. Maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I was just too real to rewrite. That realization didn't come all at once, though. It took weeks to sink in. I deleted the backups of Odette's video. I shredded the fake ID copies Nate had shown me. I even burned the envelope I'd kept, the one with the Polaroid, the spiral symbol, the flash drive. It felt good to watch it turn to ash. Cleansing, even. I started walking again. Not running from anything. Just walking. Parks, bookstores, libraries, places with people. Real people, who didn't speak in riddles or monologues or scripts. I sat at cafes and sketched on napkins. I bought new bedsheets. I repainted the living room a warm gold color Odette would have hated. I got a part-time gig teaching visual storytelling at a local community college. Pancake still sleeps on my chest like nothing ever happened. And then, one evening, it happened. A woman tapped me on the shoulder while I was thumbing through used hardcovers at the local flea market. She asked if I'd read the author before, some indie sci-fi writer from the 80s. I hadn't. She said he was obsessed with memory loops and shifting timelines. I said I'd give it a shot. We talked for half an hour without exchanging names. Just books, coffee, favorite street corners, which months feel lonelier than others. She laughed in a way that felt unscripted. Not performative. Not curated. Just human. As she walked away, she said something over her shoulder. You've got a kind face. Like someone who's survived a lot of stories. And maybe that's all I ever needed. Not revenge. Not answers. Not even closure. Just a reminder that even after someone rewrites your chapter without asking, you can still pick up the pen. You can still write something new. Final note. If you're reading this and you've been left, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, narratively, let me say this. You are not a broken plot point. You're the whole damn story. And no one gets to take that from you. Not even her. Especially not her.